we got it. So, we'll come across here. And I have a good idea where I'm headed to. And that, I work, it was much easier once I kind of worked through all of this. If I know where my point, that I have a reference to something that I know exactly what it is. Well, I know I've got one little bony point on this side that we'll get to, but most all of us can find it right now. Find the boniest point on the outside of your elbow, okay? We're going to aim towards that because that's where this ridge goes. It doesn't really tell you that in the notes, but I seem to find that work just a little bit. So we're going to come down distally, and as we go with this ridge, you're going to find that it's going to course a little bit more anterior the farther down that we go. It's also going to get a little bit wider the farther down that we go. So we're going to kind of traverse it down. Again, every time I get the drawing bit makes you really go back and realize the skin's going to move just a little bit. And things are going to look a lot bigger than you really thought they probably were. But as I get down here, it starts to actually widen a little bit, almost to a triangular shape, and it's going to shoot forward just a little bit. So, lateral supracondylar ridge. It'd be a shame if I had a Sharpie in my hand, wouldn't it? So, once we get to the distal end of that, and that little bony point that I told you, that's a very important landmark. It's our lateral epicondyle. That's going to be an origin of a lot of our forearm muscles. So if you'll look, and this, I don't know about you, but I'm not very good with centimeters and millimeters, visualizing. I can tell you what an inch looks like, right? Half inch, and you jump to that with your thumbs. But now when someone says go down 3 centimeters or 3 millimeters, I really don't know. So what did I do? I got out the ruler as I was trying to go through this. So, you know, if you want to get a protractor and help direct you through those things, do what you have to do to figure it out. That's what that information's there for, but if you can't synthesize it, figure out a way to do that. So I literally got out the old ruler. It comes down at the end of that, this bony prominence, you'll find that it talks about drawing a 1 centimeter box, and that's what it's going to encompass. There's also a lot of very descriptive terms in here: ventral, dorsal, lateral, and I had a real hard time following it because trying to decide if he meant, does that mean the way the arm is positioned now, or does that mean from anatomical position? And I'm not so sure it doesn't go back and forth just a little bit, to be honest with you. But I'm going to try to guide you in the right direction and explain it enough that you can make sense of it when you go to do it. So as I get down here, we're going to get this 1 centimeter box. Now, it has a horizontal and lateral plateau and ridge to it. Okay. That was another one. I just couldn't visualize it. But if you think 3D and you actually get to see this, sorry, I've never been this high tech before. All right. Does anybody have a pen that retracts or something I can point with that I don't get this? That's what. There we go. So we see here, it's talking about this small ridge here, that if you're looking at it in a book, this looks just flat. But it's small enough that you have this horizontal ridge and plateau and a vertical one, so vertical and horizontal. And that's going to be important when we talk about an attachment here of one of our extensor carpi muscles. So when we find that, we're going to want to be able to palpate off of the direction of one of those ridges. So we get down here, we're going to draw our little box, and literally 1 centimeter. How big is 1 centimeter, guys? Right there. That's what we're talking about. So, I mean, 1 square centimeter, not terribly big. And that's a ballpark, depending on the size of our person here. But I can feel edges. And so, we're going to mark our little box. And that's going to be our lateral epicondyle. And that was a lot of work.
30 degrees.
Can you...
There we go.
Better. Do we need to shift off these lights a little bit, or can I tell?
I think we can.
Okay. And that was a lot of work to get to what I think is actually a really easy landmark to find, to be honest with you. But we're going with it because there's some reasons, okay? And there's some reasons, and we'll get there. But that's why I started with find the most, put your elbow out, find the bony point on the side. That's that red dot right there. So let's roll over. That's going to be extensor carpi radialis brevis, where it attaches here in a minute. The capitulum. All right. Another one of those 3D things. Capitulum, as we look at it, it talks about going, palpating in a distal direction off of this. We're going to go a little bit distally, but what we're feeling for is this drop. And again, work on yourself as I'm talking here and talk through this. You're going to go approximately 3 millimeters, so a tiny fraction of what that box is. We're going to do a little bit anterior, and you should find the edge. This is what we're aiming for, is something that feels a little bit round. But we're going to get another one. We're going to get a plateau. It's kind of like those of you that drove up here and drove off the Cap Rock. That's what happens. You drove down into the plains. So here we go. We're going to outline this. To do it, to do it here, we're going to go a little bit anterior. We'll find what I call, if we're saying the anterior border. And I'm going to do that very thin because in your notes, if you look at the picture, there's actually not a front side, what I call front side to the drawing. Because there's really a joint space in there between there and radial head. That it's what I think they left it for. But we want to find the edges of the capitulum. So it should be, picture and visualize in your head what it feels like, and we're going to find the edges. And then we're going to outline them. If you look over at your notes on that next page, where it actually has the picture of all this, you can kind of see where I'm going with this. Now, you guys on the shoulders, you'll talk about verifying things at all. Were there any in that about how you
talk about levels?
Okay. Well, we've got a lot of things that come into a small area, and there are some ways that we can do movements of things where we know it either should or shouldn't move under our finger if we're palpating, or if we contract that muscle, should there be movement felt. And with this, we're on the humerus. So the next thing we're going to look